People keep asking me how I survived. I pause every time they do, not because I don't know the answer, but because the truth doesn't sound real when you say it out loud. I survived because I disobeyed my husband. That's the part no one expects. You'd think survival is about strength, or luck, or timing. But what if it comes down to a single decision? To not listen to the one person you trusted for nearly 4 decades. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. My name is Elowyn Varel. I'm 72 years old, and the man who tried to drown me was my husband, Calum, 75. We had been married for 38 years. 38. Think about that. Longer than some of you watching have even been alive. We shared a house, routines, quiet mornings, the same 2 chairs by the window. No children, just us. And nothing about that morning felt wrong. That's what unsettles me the most. We drove out to the river just after noon. It was something we did often, a habit built over years. Same road, same turns, same spot near the edge where the trees thin out and the water looks almost still. Routine is a powerful thing. It convinces you that today will be just like yesterday. But have you ever had a moment where something small feels off? Not enough to alarm you, just enough to whisper. That was Calum that day. Quieter than usual. His hands tighter on the steering wheel. A phone call earlier that morning he ended the second I walked in. I noticed. Of course I did. But after 38 years, you don't interrogate silence. You excuse it. We reached the river. The engine stayed running. That was the first real break in the pattern. I remember turning to him and asking, "Why didn't you turn it off?" He didn't answer. Not right away. Instead, he just stared ahead, then slowly opened his door and stepped out. No explanation, no glance back, just silence. And I sat there, still buckled in, watching him walk around the car. At first, I thought he was checking something. But then I felt it. A shift. A movement that didn't come from me. The car started rolling forward. And in that exact moment, before I even understood what was happening, something inside me whispered, "This isn't an accident." The car didn't roll, it was pushed. At first, my mind refused to accept it. Have you ever seen something so wrong that your brain tries to rewrite it in real time? That was me, sitting there, hands frozen in my lap, watching the river inch closer through the windshield. I told myself it was a mistake. Maybe he forgot the brake. Maybe the ground shifted. But then I turned, just slightly, and saw him. Calum, behind the car. Both hands pressed flat against the trunk, leaning forward, pushing. Slow, steady, deliberate. Not rushing, not panicking. Pushing. My chest tightened, but not from fear, not yet. From confusion. "Calum," I called out. No response. Not even a glance. That's when something cold slipped into my stomach. Because if it were an accident, he would have reacted. He would have said something, anything. But he didn't. The car jolted again, stronger this time. Gravel crackled under the tyres as we edged closer to the drop. I could hear the faint shift of water below, like it was waiting. "Calum, stop! What are you doing?" Still nothing. And that silence, it started to feel louder than any scream. I fumbled for the gear shift, my fingers clumsy, suddenly unfamiliar with something I'd used for years. Why wasn't I moving faster? Why wasn't I thinking clearly? Because part of me still believed This couldn't be real. 38 years doesn't just collapse in a second. It resists. It fights back. The front wheels dipped. The angle changed instantly. My body tilted forward as gravity took hold. A sharp, sickening drop, not far, but enough to steal the breath from my lungs. Water filled the lower edge of my view. That's when fear finally arrived. Not gently, not gradually. It hit all at once. I grabbed the door handle and pulled. Locked. Of course it was locked. My hands started shaking now, violently, as if they finally understood what my mind had been denying. Calum! This time I screamed it, louder, raw, desperate. And finally, he stopped. For a second, just one, I felt relief. He was going to fix this. He had to. Slowly, he walked along the side of the car. Not rushing, not alarmed, just calm. Too calm. And as he approached my window, leaning slightly down toward me, his face came into full view. No panic, no regret, no hesitation. Just a quiet, unsettling stillness. And in that moment, I realized something far worse than fear. He had already decided how this would end. He didn't panic. He leaned closer. That's the part that replays in my mind the most. Not the water, not the cold, not even the moment I thought I would die. It was his face. Calm, focused, almost gentle. By then, the front of the car had dipped deep enough that water was already pressing hard against the doors. I could hear it now, slamming softly, rhythmically, like a warning I had ignored for too long. I grabbed the handle again and yanked. Nothing. The pressure outside was already too strong. My breath started coming in short, uneven bursts. My chest tightened, like something inside me was locking up. Calum, please, I said, my voice cracking in a way I didn't recognize. And then he leaned in closer to the window, close enough that I could see every line in his face. Every year we had spent together, written there like history. And yet, none of it was there anymore. Just distance. He spoke quietly, almost softly. Don't move. Let it fill. For a second, just a second, I didn't understand what he meant. Let it fill. My mind tried to process it like a suggestion, like advice. But then it hit me. He wasn't trying to help me. He was telling me how to die. Something inside me cracked wide open. Why? I whispered. Not shouting, not accusing, just asking. Because after 38 years, I thought I deserved at least that. But he didn't answer. Not even a flicker of hesitation. He just watched me. Then he straightened up, turned, and began walking away. No rush, no backward glance, just footsteps on gravel, growing quieter with every step. I slammed my hand against the window. Calum! Nothing. Gone. Just like that. And then, over the sound of water rising, over the pounding of my own pulse, I heard him say something. Not to me, not even loud, just under his breath. It will look like an accident. My stomach dropped in a way that had nothing to do with the car. An accident. That's what this was supposed to be. Not a fight, not a crime. A quiet ending. Neat. Believable. Forgettable. The water reached my knees. Cold, sharp, immediate. My body reacted instantly, but my mind was racing somewhere else entirely now. Because suddenly, everything made sense. The silence, the phone call, the distance. This wasn't sudden. This was planned. And if I stayed frozen, if I did exactly what he told me, I wouldn't make it out. She realized, if she followed his instruction, she wouldn't survive. That thought cut through everything. The panic, the cold, the disbelief, all of it. Because suddenly, I wasn't confused anymore. I was in danger. The water kept rising, past my knees, creeping toward my waist. It wasn't rushing in like in the movies. It was slower, heavier. I could feel the pressure building with every second, like the river itself was closing its grip around me. My hands were shaking, but my mind started to sharpen. Fragments of memory surfaced. Something I'd heard years ago, half forgotten, almost useless at the time. Doors don't open easily underwater, not until the pressure evens out. Which meant, if I kept fighting now, I'd waste what little strength I had left. But if I waited, every instinct in my body screamed against it. Wait. Sit still while the water rises, while the air disappears. It sounded exactly like what he wanted. Don't move. His voice echoed again in my head. And that's when it shifted. Those words weren't guidance. They were control. A way to keep me passive, still, quiet. So I did the opposite. Not physically, not yet, but mentally. I stopped listening to him. The water reached my chest. My breath grew tighter, shorter. Each inhale felt thinner than the last. I tilted my head back slightly, trying to hold on to the last pocket of air. Seconds stretched, twisted. How long had it been? A minute? 2? It felt endless. Then, finally, the pressure changed. Subtle, but enough. I grabbed the handle again, pulled. This time, it moved. The door resisted at first, then suddenly gave way, swinging open with a heavy surge of water that nearly dragged me sideways. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I pushed forward, forcing myself through the opening, my body clumsy and slow in the water. Cold swallowed everything. Sound, air, thought. For a moment, I didn't even know which way was up. Then, light. Faint. Shifting. I kicked toward it with everything I had left. My lungs burned. My chest tightened to the point of pain. And then, I broke the surface. Air hit me like something solid. I gasped, choking, pulling in breath after breath like I'd never done it before. I barely remember getting to the shore. Just fragments, mud, hands, voices somewhere far away. By the time they found me, I was shaking so hard I couldn't speak. But I was alive. And the car was already sinking behind me. Hours later, when they pulled it from the river, that's when things started to unravel. Because I wasn't the only one who had heard him. Hours later, they found the car, and everything he thought would stay hidden started surfacing. By the time investigators arrived, I was already at the hospital, wrapped in blankets, answering questions I barely had the strength to process. But the river, it had kept its own record. The car was recovered just before nightfall, mud-streaked, half crushed at the front, exactly where it should have been if it had been an accident. Except it wasn't. Because not everything sank. A fisherman, Orrin Hale, 64, had been across the river that afternoon, far enough that Kylam likely never noticed him, close enough to hear more than he should have. At first, Orrin thought it was just a couple arguing. Raised voices carry strangely over water. But then he heard something specific, clear, distinct. "Don't move. Let it fill." The same words, exact, repeated, not shouted in panic, spoken calmly. That detail changed everything. When they brought Kylam in for questioning, he didn't break. Not immediately. He sat there the same way he had stood by the car, composed, measured, careful. But evidence doesn't need emotion. It builds quietly. They found the insurance policy, taken out just months earlier, a significant amount, enough to solve the financial strain he had kept hidden for years. Debts I never knew existed, accounts I had never seen. Then came the inconsistencies in his statement, small at first, then impossible to ignore, and finally, Orrin's testimony. That was the fracture point. Intent, not accident, not confusion, a decision. Kylam Varel was arrested and later convicted of attempted murder. No outburst, no denial in the end. Just that same quiet stillness, as if the outcome didn't surprise him. For me, the aftermath was quieter, but heavier. People in town stopped me, not always to ask questions, but to look. Like they were trying to reconcile the story with the life they thought they understood. I sold the house. Every room felt different after that day. Not haunted, just rearranged in a way I couldn't live inside anymore. Months later, I went back to the river. Not for answers, there weren't any left. Just to stand there, on steady ground this time, and look at the water without feeling it closing in. And I realized something simple. He told me not to move, to stay still, to let it happen. But survival wasn't strength, it wasn't luck. It was refusal. Refusal to follow the final instruction of someone who had already decided I shouldn't exist anymore. And that's the part I carry with me now. Not the water, not the fear. Just that one decision. To do the exact opposite.